Okay, we are live once again for the final, hopefully final part of this series, which I now think is on 7 episodes, or this is the 7th part. I really hope I'm right with that. Yeah. Okay, so the basics. I started with way too many fonts, and this was causing me problems. I made a little speech to say, though it is changed quite a bit, at least the situation that went into it. But I will read the speech and then I will begin doing the last stretch of font deletion. There comes a point in every would-be graphic designer's life when they realize enough is enough. They have gone too far, indulged too much. Something must be done, and intervention is necessary. Sacrifices must be made to shed the excesses of our indulgence. Harsh and cruel sacrifices made on the altar of less is more. Okay. But seriously, I had too many fonts. I started with 2,814 fonts installed, and this caused me a lot of problems. The first problem, of course, was this made programs like Photoshop lag. I had essentially 980 megabytes of active memory being used on just fonts, and now I am down to roughly 120 megabytes, I think. I will check that just now. And the second problem is when you have so many fonts, it's literally impossible to choose the best one because it will take you too long to find them in all your fonts. Okay. I'm currently down to 126.58 megabytes. So having too many fonts is, of course, a problem. And of course, the ideal solution is pruning my fonts down to around 200 is the goal I initially set out, though I'm more likely to have between 300 and 400 at the end of this stream, and this is probably going to be the last stream. And I will hopefully just have the best fonts that I ever collected over the years. And I've been using the program maintype and nexusfont to do this. Nexusfont had quite a few problems. A lot of fonts it could not delete, a lot of system fonts it could not delete, and after fonts were deleted, it would still show them despite them being deleted, so it was causing me problems and headaches. But it did have a better display, or so I thought, than maintype. And it did have a group function, and I didn't think that I could do that on the maintype free version. But I actually have the option to display it how I want on maintype, and to group fonts on maintype, and I did not realize that, so I no longer need Nexus Font Manager. So, a few other notes from during this whole series. Don't delete Segoy UI if you are using Windows. It is somewhat important to the system, but not necessarily critical. I deleted it and my power button turned into a square. So some of the system fonts are responsible for characters and symbols that you'll see in both web browsers and on things like the power button and other things. But it's fairly easy to restore Segoy UI, at least on Windows. So if you just want to delete all your fonts, most of it can be fixed if you make some critical mistake. Or don't worry about deleting system fonts at the beginning. Or maybe the foreign language fonts. And I did find this link right here, which is how I fixed the problem, at least with Segoy UI on Windows. So, with that out of the way, I will now continue where I left off, which was at dinner. Oh, want to see a joke? Then. These fonts are labeled as thin. That's funny. So, how do I actually want to sort these? Okay, the sorting is here. So I'm probably not going to delete any Adobe fonts at this point, or any Microsoft fonts. That still leaves there's a lot of fonts that I don't necessarily need and might be looking into later. And let's see. I've basically gone through everything except for the main sans serifs and serif fonts that I wanted to keep. And some of these I have to decide whether or not I really like them or not. I think I have gotten rid of most of the novelty fonts that I did not want. But the interface is not necessarily perfect. And now I recognize most of these fonts are ones that I specifically decided to keep. But I'm also at the point where was this one I decided to keep, or was it one I decided to get rid of? That is the problem when switching between Nexus Font Manager and this one and not deciding that, hey, I actually had the settings, but didn't quite realize it at the beginning. So, one, I think I will be this one, getting rid of this one. Now, do I have repeats here, or is this... Yes, I should sort by family, just so I don't accidentally remove fonts that I don't want to remove. Yes. Okay. This font is one that I was debating on uninstalling or not, simply because the characters are just much larger than normal fonts, and that is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine when it comes to fonts, and I think I will get rid of this one, and I might look for one that's similar, or if I actually do need it, I can always just reinstall it. So right now, now for this one, I might actually go to my font panel. And I actually do like the normal version of it, but I don't like the other circle version. But on maintype, I think when I would uninstall the font, it would uninstall the entire font family. And sometimes I just want to uninstall one part of the font. So a great number of the remaining fonts are fonts that actually are font families and have multiple components. And now most of these fonts are ones that I decided to already keep. So this one is not in that category. But that's basically a repeat, I think. Now most of the fonts I got are ones that I've gotten over the years or more recently from Creative Fabrica. Creative Fabrica, if you just sign up to their newsletter, will send you a great deal of fonts for free. And that's where the problem really started getting out of the hand for me. Even though I was probably sitting at probably 1,500 fonts even before I subscribed to Creative Fabrica. This is a font that I consider sort of awful, but I think that it's situationally useful. That's the reason why it's staying. Great number of these fonts. I might even pull up my search when I'm curious about a font family. This is a fairly nice font family, but it's also very similar to a lot of others. And let's see. I think I will uninstall this font family. Simply because I have so many font families that are like that. The only thing that really particularly stands out for this font is the very thin version. And it is an overall nice font, but I don't need specifically. I think I will get rid of this one. I will probably keep this one though. Benton's a really great font family to have something or something similar. I really like the style of this font. So now I'm down to basically most of the fonts that I was happy with to begin with. So it was much harder to get rid of fonts that I don't like. This one's sort of like a Jurassic Park font, I think. Now that's Arial. Compact, ink-free, Segoy, symbol. All of those are considered part of the monotype. Unfortunately, even if I don't like, say, Carbel or Cartana, uh, Marlet I can't even uninstall, and it would probably actually break the system if you tried uninstalling it. Don't try to uninstall Marlet. Now there might be some... No, those aren't repeat. There's a lot of Segoy UI versions out there. Verdana is a really nice font, and one of the basic free fonts for web. Basically, almost all systems have Verdana, as well as Georgia, as well as a few others. There was some early fonts that were made to work based on basically on any system, regardless, and they were put out for free for that purpose. Now this one is one I've been thinking about getting rid of. The BN Jinx and BN Machine. I think they're both fairly nice fonts. Like, there's nothing wrong with a font like this, it's just that there's so many similar fonts to it. Okay. A lot of unique fonts in this group. Okay. I definitely want to uninstall. I did like Grim Notes. I think this one was not one of the ones I decided to save. But then again, it is a fairly nice... Like, I'm going to say it's a fairly nice font for almost all of these now. Much harder to get rid of them at this point. Okay. This font has two versions that are very similar. What are the differences? I don't need both, that's for sure. I'm guessing one is more condensed in some ways. That has to be it. I think I will get rid of this version of it. I'll leave the italic version. I do like that sort of style. Well, the only thing going for it is how it does that G, the E, and the A. So I might get rid of the whole font family. Like, the only reason I'm even keeping the font is the E and the A there. And it does that with the E and the L. It might also do it with something like a Z, depending. No, it doesn't. Well, I do like it. This one's actually a hard choice. I think it's gonna stay though. Like pretty much all the fonts I have left are very useful. I think I will get rid of the Roboto font family. It's a good font, but it's also nothing special compared to standard Arial or similar fonts. Or let's make sure that I did make some notes over time. They've sort of gotten messed up and placed all over the place. About which fonts that I specifically added. Uh, nope, no notes about this one, so I think it's fine to uninstall it. I did want Caveat and Caveat Brush. Okay, this is one that's very similar to a typewriter. I like that one. I think I will uninstall these two for the same reason. They just are too similar to other fonts. I do like what they're doing with some of the stuff, but look at that. Yeah, this @ sign is really weird. I actually do like the fours here. Like that's one of the few times where the 4 has the part removed that I actually found it somewhat nice. Okay, I don't feel like I need any of these. They're nice, but they're also very similar to other fonts. Like if it's going to look very similar to a standard system font, then it isn't particularly worth keeping over a standard system font because I'm going to have to keep the standard system fonts simply because they're used in a lot of things. Looks like this is just a repeat install. I don't really see anything different. Might be some. I think that's just a repeat. I think this is another repeat. So it's a bit annoying to have a few repeats in the installs. Probably because I might have gotten the same font for free from Creative Fabrica multiple times. Okay, I like these. Rainier is essentially a Futura clone that you don't have to pay royalties on. And I will actually probably delete Futura, even though I have a web version, simply because that's a font that I do think they try to protect the IP of more so than others, even though it's a ridiculously popular. And this is a nice sort of worn font. This is all the Futuras. Did say I was going to actually get rid of them. I can always find these font files again, but much better just to use Rainier instead. And then, of course, the Adobe. So now the next part is really comparing like from the Adobe ones, get so many great fonts anyways. Let's see, I just saw, yeah, First Stencil or STD is also a nice, good one. So just between Adobe, let me search this. Adobe has 81 fonts together. Microsoft has 88 fonts. So my idea of getting down to just 200 fonts is probably going to be impossible because you can't really get rid of those fonts. But you have 88 and 81, so 169. There just isn't enough room for other fonts if I do it that way. So more likely I have to get down to 300 fonts, and it's basically going to be pruning fonts that, well, I don't need Adobe Arabic. I know that for certain. Now, are those fonts actually going to be removed? Yeah, they are removed, but it's still showing up. Okay. All the ones that are uninstalled should be on. Okay, Bedoni is actually part of the Adobe Foundry. Thought it wasn't. I'll need to look that up because I specifically downloaded a Bedoni clone. If it's actually part of the Adobe license, fine with me. Learn something new every day. No, these fonts are already uninstalled. These are system default fonts. Okay, let me just compare. Oh, Palatino. Yeah, that's a nice font to keep. Something up quick for that. Yeah, Palantino should be a default font on Windows. Very common font too. This one is one I apparently got rid of. I think that one is a good enough one to actually put back in the rotation. Definitely has a very interesting character to it. Okay. So a lot of these are now just default fonts. Cydia. One's already installed. So now I'm in a stage where. Okay, well, I should just go to active fonts because I'm finding too many fonts that. I'm going to leave the Adobe fonts alone and the Microsoft fonts alone. And I might even consider myself done at this point. Because I've already done so much to clear down my fonts. Okay. Bold. Bold. what I'm really looking to do is compare. Yeah, I should do this by Foundry. This is going to be a bit annoying. And this is going to be a bit annoying. Open Sans is already a font family I know I'm going to keep. As well as those. So now Cydia is the font family I know I'm going to keep. As in B. Now I just need to organize. Okay. Right. Click the wrong thing and now. Sure. This one, it's apparently a duplicate for both. That will save me some small amount of space. There's a paid feature in maintype to find duplicate fonts. I'm just not using the paid version. I'm gonna actually create. No, serif. Uh, I'll just put serif. Yeah. Know what it means. Basically, serif fonts that are up for whether or not I think that they can be gone. Font Forge. Okay, we'll put that one. I don't necessarily. The universe, L's, I do like enough. Actually, no, I don't particularly. They're sort of very similar to Future. Fanwood. I want to. Book letter, I do want to. Ones are cursive. Serif. I'm just organizing my fonts. See if there's any more that I actually get rid of. Okay. Go for the. No, those will probably keep. Still better to pair them in. I was definitely. Okay. Now, is this a repeat? I think it is a repeat. No, it's not a repeat. They're slight variations, I can tell already. At least with this symbol right here. Otherwise, they are basically the same. Well, one of them. Oh, they're incorrect. This one, it seems to be a similar case. I will actually probably get rid of both of these. Simply because the numbers are not done in the same style. The rest of that. Does this go in the print handwriting category, or does it go... Or does it go in serif or... I think it's too stylized. It's much closer to handwriting. Doing the same organization I did in the last video, but in maintype instead of nexusfont manager. I wish I had known I could do this in main first. Okay, this seems to be another repeat. In fact, it might even... Yeah, that might actually be a third repeat of the same font. Don't know why I would have three versions of this font. There. Nice font, no, but... I like this font simply because it does the @ sign this way. This one, I think I'm gonna get rid of just because of how thin the font is. That one for Halloween. Something scary and special, I guess. A lot of these I've already decided to keep. Nice to compare the last few of them in this inner. That font called Husband is actually going to be a really nice one to use. Well, by the end of this, I will actually have a great memory of a lot of the fonts that I. Let's see. One, I think is a cursive. Don't see any hearts or any. And this one actually goes. We really need like one font like this. Very interesting. I think I will. That one actually might be important to. That's something I'm gonna have to do a quick search for. This is a font that's used Spotify? I don't know. Let's see what I can find of it. Seems like it's the Spotify font or something similar to it. I'll leave it be. Alino is definitely. Yeah, I've already decided to keep the Euro style. Then stands. Okay. Bodoni X is an alternate free Bodoni made to look like Bodoni. Let's see. All of these are gonna stay where they are. Now, is this a typewriter font? It does look like it has a sort of edge to it. Up just a little bit. So it is visible. Sort of has a typewriter feel to it. This is an interesting font. All these. I'm gonna put that in higher than sci-fi. now I'm down to fonts that I think are fairly good. Before I was using a distinction between super bold and like style, but I think I put them in the same group for most of them. I do think it is sort of funny just how many fonts are now just bold. Not gonna. Guess I'm gonna put that. So not sure it really style, but I thought I perhaps I tried to delete them. I don't. It reminds me of the Nightmare. Christmas is a fun. Oh, and I should probably put on some music because this is going to be dull otherwise. Even though I've been doing this for an hour without music. Oh no! Okay. This is a font I'm specifically keeping as just the one that's sort of all over the place. It's bad. Yeah. I'll actually go into handwriting. Unisync. That'd be. Is this the same font repeated? I do believe. Then versions of the same font. Agreed. Okay. All the people on Creative Fabrica need to put more metadata into it. Sort of slash. Oh, something. Sounds sort of familiar. Okay, Lato is the third most served font on Google Fonts. That means it's probably good to keep. Yeah. Okay. Actually, that one. Go into printer here. Maybe. Sci-fi, mustard. Letter. Novels. Character. Pink. Horror. Novel. Might just delete the happy rainbow one, but I am just gonna do it. I do remember these fonts, and I decided to get rid of all of them but Met. move. Oh, hold on. No, I'm just gonna get rid of it. You have to. Where was I? Yes, I think I was. Okay. Think our specifics. And thoughts. Okay. And this one is just an amazing font, this Agenda Celebration script, because it actually has a cursive key. Do like this. Really hard to get rid of some of these fonts. Jahar, I think I'll get rid of. Okay, I think I will get rid of this one. I do like the rotten. I think I will get rid of say rule. Because if I want to do something like that, I can just use code. Well, this one's a bit more in depth than just using a Photoshop effect. Apparently, I put some put a sans serif in here rather than let's see. I think there's no reason to have this one when I have the magic hopes. That one. Lovely Amora compared to... I don't like either of them. I think I'll keep Lovely Amora. I'll probably keep both the That's an font. Do I have anything that's sort of like that, but better or worse? I think with Magic Hopes regular, I don't need flowers. These two fonts are basically more or less the same for what I need. I think that Pink Home regular. I think I will use Think Home instead. Somehow I missed the digital clock font that I have. Switching through, so it doesn't matter too much. Hopefully, find it. So, I'm hoping to actually get down to like 500. But there's a lot of fonts that are just common use. Okay. Now some of these it might come down to how well they compare against the default fonts. I'm thinking I might have something in the default fonts that can do the same thing as Amolia Boutique Sans. Black letter. Now for this, I don't really need... I don't even know what's different between them. I think I will prefer the first two. Let's... Okay. I don't think I actually need Directive 4 condensed. I think the normal Directive 4 is just better. Just not gonna need these for extra versions of it. And it's condensed in such a way that I could just make it thinner. Photoshop. Happy with the rest of it. Yeah, these ones are fine. Now these ones I've already selected and whittled down to just these 6. Okay, I think I can get this down. Do I want the alternate? I think I'm gonna get rid of Farsi. If I'm to get rid of any of these, it'd probably be one of the 2 Grim Notes. I think Grim Notes alternate I'll get rid of. I think I will get rid of Milky Winter. Now the cursive ones, I have a lot more than I thought I did. And let's see, I might have to go into nexusfont. To see which ones I like the most. Like the letters on this one. Same time. I think that's one I decided to cut and then decided not to cut last time, or 2 times ago. One's actually one of the kitsch fonts. Not be group. Okay, that actually worked in moving it. Okay. Question is whether or not this one holds merit. Damian, I think this is one that I decided to cut because of the spaces between unclosed loop and like the feet. I think I will. Diamonds, good. Falling in love. I think that was that one I chose to cut. Probably open up next font. See which ones. No, actually, I didn't even make a cursive section because I'd already done that. That doesn't help me at all. I don't think this is a great italic. I think this is one that I chose. Dancing script and Fab Felt script look very similar. Fab Felt was one that I liked last time. I think Fab Felt looks a bit more handwritten. Both have an undersized Y. Don't really see a reason to keep both of them. I think I will get rid of dancing script. I think I will cut. Well, let's see if I have something that's like it. A semi-bold one. I do think I have ones that do it better than the Big Caddy. Yeah, okay, why should I use... Have Fun Saturday over... Puzzle. Oops. Oh, the signature. Even that one. I'm trying to play this one. This one is a pitch one. I think this is one to remove. The Better Hearts. This one, like on the T, it's sort of better. Okay, if I'm down to 500, I will be very happy at the end. This one, I'm... Let's see, do I have ones that I think do it better than the Humble script? Yeah, the Humble script actually does the numbers fairly well here. Getting rid of this one because Humble script is better than this one. We like Playball, Pacifico, yeah. Fine script, I think I'm getting rid of this one. This one's a bit more spaced out, but that can be sort of nice on some fonts. Not too much larger than a normal font. Definitely moving. This one I'm having trouble reading. That R is okay. Like that one. Looks pretty nice. Let's see. This is a sort of thin one. Anyone do better than Kel? Oh wait, Keldita is actually a kitsch font. It has little hearts for the eyes. What? Fine. This will. Is it a cursive font? It has somewhat cursive-looking capitals. But it's not a cursive font. That will go into. Let's see. I think I don't like this one enough. Daffia. I like this. I like the numbers on this one. That's a sort of very interesting way to do it. That 3, that 5, and that 9. As well as the 6 going the other way. Now let's see. I believe in you. Are there any... Actually, that one... This one is actually a kitsch font because it has hearts in the font. Or on the eye. Does any of them do it better than Max? I think quite a few do it better. X7 seems to have an odd style. It's sort of like curved, flowing this way. Not necessarily a bad way to do it. These fonts are... This one is a mix of cursive and normal letters. I think it's not Particularly. I think I will get rid of it just because the connectors on the O's are literally in the center. I like this one because it's sort of reminiscent of a nibbed pen that you can do some very angular strokes on. Okay. But now I am down to a bunch of fonts that I'm not certain yet, and I'm probably going to take too long thoughting them. I go back to print. Maybe there's one more I'd like to remove. I think the minimum jump. Yeah, I think I can get rid of this one. But I'm the only one fussing. Okay, now we're going into super bold. Or just the bold. I put all the super bold in. Now, let's go and look at the only reason I haven't gotten rid of this one is because of the @ sign right here, I think. Now, there's also a problem where a lot of these fonts have good alternates in the default fonts. Is this a fairly common font? I don't know. Sounds like a name that's familiar. It might be named after something. Okay, Montserrat is definitely a common font. Definitely off limits. And almost all of these are just really exceptional fonts just by themselves. Really hard to get down just to 500. think that I'm gonna move this into the super bold just so I can compare it. In the area bold. Bold. Really hard to get down to just this few fonts and already have a much better performance than for other games. This might be near stop. Okay, if I compare Earthbound to Ariel, I do not like it as much as Ariel. It's actually a very nice font at the same time. I'll get rid of it. This is the Y more so than anything else. Now let me compare Autumn to I thought I put impact in there. Okay, yes I did. Okay, Autumn has a more square nature to its sides. Impact has rounded edges. I think Autumn can. Just compare impact to other fonts. This will probably be. I think Impact is better than Antelope. Let's see. It's a very similar font, but I think Impact does the job better. Compare this to Impact. Revelate. I think I'll get rid of the Revelate. It is a bit different, and it doesn't have lowercase. But I think Impact and other simple fonts do better, like including this universal standard. If I need a font like Universal Sans, I can make that thinner, push it a bit. I'll do the same. Next. Fairly nice. Okay, I'll look for other fonts that sort of are squared off. So for example, Autumn is also squared off. In fact, Autumn might do the job better than being Machine, while being more legible. If there's any other squared off fonts. That one, Crazy Robot, is very square, but it's also rounded on the edges. Doesn't have any sharp angles to it. Besides that. This one does have sharp corners. Also this one, but this one has rounded corners that are smooth. I think that one probably does a better job. And being Machine, I've been thinking about getting rid of this one a bit. Also like with the A right here and the E right here. Very thin inside dot. Let's see. The Georgia Italic. So nice. Does such a great job. Let's see. Pick italic. Some things try to do it a different style. I think Georgia has champion. Yeah, I would probably never use it. The italic BN font is a little bit better than the normal one because it does a bit better with the A and only slightly. Thinking I might cut them both. Depending. I think Georgia, the default Georgia, does it better than the Mayfrick font does. Mayfrick is not a bad font at all, and I do like some parts of it. And it has better numbers than Georgia does, and I think overall, Georgia font wins out. Georgia's just a really nice default font. Partially obsessed with font. Everyone did a college project based on Georgia. I think I'm gonna get rid of the last Earth parts. And there's a good chance that most of these fonts that I'm struggling to delete right now, I won't have any use for them in the next entire year. Okay, I'm gonna compare the Jellion. I think for a very rounded font, Jellion does better than the Pristine. It's sort of a almost handwritten font. Very round. Not a uniform round. Don't see any font that can replace it. Jellion is the closest. Jellion is a bit different. I could use them both in the same situation though. Jellion is consistent looking. If I had to choose one or the other to get rid of one of them. If I get rid of common ground, I think I'm going to get rid of common ground. Fair display. I think I have a lot that are similar. I think Playfair display is not as good as Georgia. So the only way for me to... I think I'm pretty much done going through the independent fonts. Now the only thing really left are like the Adobe fonts. All of these are really nice and pretty heavily used. And then there's the Microsoft fonts. I don't even particularly like Calibri or Cambria. I don't think I've ever seen anyone use Candora. But because they're Microsoft font fonts, they're sort of hard to get rid of. I could possibly remove some parts of the Segoy. Segoy? I don't know. But this is used heavily in the actual Windows operating system as a default. Would make some of the most sense. Get rid of some of these. But it looks like I'm pretty much at the end of what I'm willing to just outright get rid of. I have a good variety of fonts left over, as well as most of the default fonts. Now, I'm looking to get rid of some of these just to get rid of some extra fonts at the end. Then these ones are not particularly standouts compared to the default fonts. And I already am down to a pretty low number of... If I'm down to 100, I am down to... There's 115 megabytes. I'm pretty close to the performance. Well, I'm already at the performance goal. Photoshop is running fine now. So now I have to decide whether or not it's just time to call it a day. With the fonts I've chosen to keep. And I think it's probably time to call it a day and just end the series because, well, I've gone down to fonts that I'm really having a hard time choosing between, and I think that most of the fonts are really nice, and what I really need to do is compare some of the fonts to the default fonts and see whether or not default fonts are better than them. And that will be more practice and design work as I just look at the fonts for a longer time. And I'll probably end up getting more fonts in time, and hopefully I'll upgrade my system sometime, even though this is a fairly good shit that's done me well. But like if I got to 64, no wait, I should be at 60. I'm at 32 gigabytes for my... I'm at 32 gigabytes. But if I was like at 64, this would be a lot easier to worry about. But I should be very careful in the future about just installing fonts because, well, it is a pain to get rid of them. And quite frankly, I probably should have just uninstalled all but the default fonts, all but the Adobe fonts here. If I was to do this again, I'd just basically uninstall everything but the Adobe, the Microsoft, and the monotype imaging, and then start from a big list of fonts and use like Nexus Font Manager to not install them but to browse them and then just add them one at a time to the ones I like and that I don't think are just a worse version of default fonts. And in some cases it's like only mildly worse. Like a lot of these fonts are really heartbreaking me. Breaks my heart to get rid of because I do like them and I do think they were done very well. It's just that the default fonts are default for a reason. They're really, really good. Well, that is basically it. I've gone through basically everything. With cursive fonts, the big thing that helped me in deciding whether to delete them or not is just being able to see how the capital connects to the lowercase. And like a lot of fonts, GR is a really good capital G and the lowercase r because a lot of them will have a truncated r that doesn't connect to the capital. And those fonts are pretty easy to discard. They might have other qualities that are really nice, but at the end of the day, other fonts will do it better typically do it better if they're doing that with their G's and R. A lot of fonts I got rid of because they do the sort of European style where they put a dash in 7 or the Z, and I don't particularly like that. And if I was to do for an audience like there, I'd just add that in manually in my own designs. There were a lot of fonts that were like two fonts put together. One would be like a shadow meant to be put underneath the font, and you just don't have the space for that kind of font, that kind of novelty font. I got rid of a lot of monograms that are split characters. Monograms are definitely an interesting thing. But if you're doing a monogram in design, it might be better just to do something custom. But I don't know. I did probably keep you a check. I did keep this as a monogram. This one I felt was fairly nice. And it's showing a lot of fonts I've uninstalled too. Now this one, it's sort of interesting font, but at the end of the day I don't really like it. I did keep one monogram out of many that I got to create that. And overall I think that I've gotten down to at least a usable number of active fonts. That's not too much. I might actually go through and get rid of some of the Adobe fonts that I don't particularly like. Caslon, I don't particularly like that. Bedoni's really nice. Might have better options than Chaparral. Charlemagne is really nice. But some of these, like Myriad, Myriad Pro, they're just so commonly used. You definitely have to keep them on your system. Tor Sans, I don't recognize the font name, but I think I've seen this font everywhere. From Microsoft, I could possibly remove more. But Microsoft's system of font faults are going to be heavily used on the web, simply because they're default fault. I don't really like Calibri, but it's very common. Georgia, I love. Gabriola is very nice. Cortana, it's probably used for some programmed Windows. Yeah, because it looks like a very generic font. I don't like it at all, but I think something would probably break if I got rid of it. And I do know some things have broken in my deletion. And that's why I have Segoia UI, even though I don't like Segoia UI. This is where Microsoft Windows gets a lot of its special characters from the Segoia UI fonts. Okay, and well, I'm pretty much done rambling. It is now midnight. So that is probably a good stopping point and finishing point for this series. Well, I did want to get down to 200. Let's see. What is this? Let's see. Not counting Adobe and Microsoft fonts, so let's see. 168, 172, 192. The 192 of my fonts are from Adobe and Microsoft. They're defaults. Probably a few others as well, I'm guessing. And probably another 50 are very common fonts, so of the fonts I have installed personally that didn't come with other programs and didn't come with the default system or with the Adobe Creative Suite, I might be down to under 200. Technical victory. The best kind of victory. Yes? Or the best kind of correct? It's relatively correct. And I could, just for the point of it, just uninstall them, but it will cause me more problems in the end than it would solve. And like these new fonts, I sort of want to get rid of, but I think they're novel enough, possibly useful for some designs. This one's a fun font, but also I'm not even sure I could ever use that. I might end up going up to 500 again, but I'll be very careful about the fonts I choose to add from here on. I do like this one. Font. Okay, and that's about it, so I will be putting on the end screen. 5, 4, 3, 2,